on this edition of the Self-Publishing Show.
Ultimately, what we're all about, what this whole business is about, is serving paying customers, retail customers, so they can buy the products that they want, and helping authors grow their business inevitably means you have to serve your customers.
Publishing is changing. No more gatekeepers, no more barriers, no one standing between you and your readers. Do you want to make a living from your writing? Join indie bestseller Mark Dawson and first-time author James Blatch as they shine a light on the secrets of self-publishing success. This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Yes, hello and welcome to the Self-Publishing Show. It's James Blatch.
And Mark Dawson.
And we've got a big interview this week, haven't we, Mark? Should we hold it in suspense for the moment?
Let's hold it in suspense for 3 minutes.
And I've got a fantastic set of props for this episode.
Oh dear.
Can I get it on with my headphones? I can't. No, I can't.
Now remember, people were listening rather than watching, so
look at this.
I will. James has just got his helmet out. I saw Jimmy Carr last night, so I've possibly been polluted with smutty jokes. But anyway, yes, James has got a flight helmet and some kind of flight mask. I don't know what they're called.
This is not such a mask.
There we go. So, and he's also got a Mae West, which you wear, and it's a blood-stained Mae West, which is a bit worrying. So he's showing all these things to the camera right now. And why do you have this unusual collection of 1960s aviation equipment, apart from the fact that you probably get excited from having it?
Because it's our wedding anniversary, and I'm dressing up.
There we go.
Jill's putting all this on later. This is for, I've got my front cover, which is well publicised, had a stock image which Stuart had purchased, and my first beta reader was my father, who was there in the 1960s flying these jets, and his immediate comment before he opened the book was, that guy is wearing the wrong stuff, and he was indeed wearing World War II garb, and by the 1960s it had all changed for the jet era, and so I've been shopping around. So this is the thing, which we should say, is that Stuart often works with stock images all the time, and he became increasingly frustrated with situations like this where they're almost right but not quite, and that might just be the way people are posing and the hair length or whatever. So he has actually started a little side project, which he is talking about but isn't launched yet, which is to start building up their own stock images. I mean, you can offer authors the opportunity to have the photographs done with a model or themselves, in my case, and they're building up some images in the background as well with a photographer who's another one of our students, actually, who's recently come back from Dubai. And so that's what we're doing in this case, and I've had to find this original stuff, which is amazing. It smells, I can say, it smells musty and used, and like we're inside a jet. I mean, that's an amazing bit of kit. This is the fighter jets Mae West. It's a complex bit of kit that plugged you into the jet. The straps held you down during an ejection, all the rest of it, painstakingly manufactured and made. I've had to buy it all off eBay and then from some sites in London, because no one seems to have this stuff, but I've now got the collection. I reckon it's valuable now.
How much did you pay for it?
Well, the helmet was the most expensive thing. I think the helmet was about £200. And I've paid, the cheapest thing was this, which was the most difficult thing to get hold of.
What are you holding up, James? Remember, this is the radio.
This is the Mae West. And it's really, so I found people who'd sold it 2 years ago, but no one's got them now. And they emailed all these people and said, no, they're very rare, can't get them anymore. But the people who sold it 2 years ago on eBay, I sent them that listing and said, look, have you got any more of these? And they're a big company in London that do a lot of theatrical stuff. And they emailed me about a week later and said, we've got one and you can have it for 75 quid. And I phoned them up within 10 seconds and said, yep. And they sold, the one they sold, I don't think they looked at the listing properly. They sold for £238 2 years ago. So I'm probably going to make some money on this.
Right, okay.
I'll sell it again afterwards. But yeah, this is a long one.
You paid £70 for a blood-stained Mae West.
Yeah, the blood makes it real.
You haven't got that, have you? You know who Mae West is, don't you?
No, I actually don't know who Mae West is. A lifeboat.
Very famous actress.
Ah.
Did you work in the film industry for a while?
I did, but how old are you?
Oh, well, younger than you, strangely enough. But,
no, I didn't know why they're called Mae West.
Well, I was going to ask you this, but just what I didn't. I'm just going to have a quick look here. Yes, Mae West was a famous actress from
I assume she was a lifeboat woman.
No, Mae West is a very, very famous actress from from the 30s or 40s, I think. So
Okay.
yes, you should, for your homework for next week's episode, to tell me why it's called a Mae West.
Okay. I looked that. So we're doing the shoot on Monday, and I have everything ready to go for that. I'm slightly worried that I'm not going to look quite right. So, but obviously the character's going to be in silhouette as much as possible.
You never look quite right.
I've never looked quite right. So I'm not 29, which one of the characters is, and I'm not 57, which the other character is. Well, I am closer to that. But we'll see. It'll be an interesting experience. So going to work with John on we'll take some pictures. Might do at some point.
I should hope you will take some pictures.
Obviously,
It'll be a bit of a waste of time.
but we'll take some other pictures of what's going on, give people an idea. And obviously, this is set up in the UK, so it's unrealistic for people listening in the States. But in the UK, if you do have a specific character in mind, and what John said to me on the phone when we planned this is we'll take a whole shed load of pictures. We'll take lots of stuff you can use in adverts. We'll do close-ups of the equipment, the helmet that might just work in the background to help you create creatives over the years to come. So make the most of the session. So that's my dressing up. I would like to wear the oxygen mask for the rest of the session.
So, yes, red one. Break. Over?
Over, yes. I wish it was. Anyway, yes, there we go. So that's James's fun time taken care of. So, yes, I think we should move on to other business. So do we have any Patreon subscribers, James?
We do. We have a shed load of Patreon subscribers who've joined us, and we don't get to these necessarily every week. Someone did email us this week and said, I didn't hear my name last week, because we did batch record a couple of episodes last week. So you're hopefully going to hear your name today. So thank you very much. These are people who've gone to patreon.com/self-publishing show and pledged as little as $1 an episode to help support the show, keep it on air, and also gives you access to an amazing array of benefits, the biggest one of which is membership of the Self-Publishing Formula University, where last week we had a live training session on BookBrush, which was excellent, on creating ads. It wasn't just about using BookBrush. The guys taught us and talked to us about why some ads work and some don't, what you should be doing, what you should be looking at, good examples in there. We have another episode next week on going wide, how to go wide profitably. That's going to be with Publish Drive, and they're going to talk about all the little things you've got to get right. Going wide is a bit more complex, obviously, than simply sitting exclusively with Amazon. So a good live training session, and all these sessions go onto the shelf in the university. You get access to all of them straight away. So we are going to welcome supporters: Sam Alexander from Colorado in the United States of America, Timothy Cove from Victoria, Australia. Oh, I haven't looked at the cricket score. Is it bad?
It's been raining.
Oh, thank goodness.
Raining all morning.
England aren't all out, which I was expecting by lunchtime.
As far as I know.
Just reminded me, saying hello to Timothy Gove there in Victoria, Australia. Holly Starkey, who is from Indiana, Indiana, United States of America.
Yes.
And Dharma Keller. Keller, I think Kelleher, Keller, from Arizona in the US. And then, thankfully, without locations, Glenn Knock, DDS, Marion Hill, Henry Stradford, Jill Ramsauer, Melanie Parkinson, Bruce Robb, Fiona Sheridan, Crystal Johnson, Lawrence Frederick Hebb, E.K. Hall, and Gina Nelson, MD. Managing Director or Doctor, one of the two. Probably like the Dougie House at MD.
Or Maryland.
Or Maryland, yes. No, she's, I think it's Dr. Nelson. Anyway, we want to welcome Sam, Timothy, Holly, Dharma, Glenn, Marion, Henry, Jill, Melanie, Bruce, Fiona, Crystal, Lawrence, EK, and Gina. Thank you very much indeed for being on board. It means a lot to me, and Mark, and John, and Tom, and Catherine, and everybody else and Alexandra. A lot of people go in to the process of getting this podcast out every week, believe me. And yeah, John, the other John. Right. Anything else we're going to talk about before we bring on our big guest?
Well, we could probably, this is why I'm so professional. I can see smoothly from one to the other. So we are, this by the time this goes out, I would be quite surprised if this is now a redundant message, because we'll probably have sold out all the tickets for the self-publishing show live, which is going to be, we think, 99% sure now, going to be the 9th of March 2020, the Monday before the London Book Fair next year. And it is likely to be sponsored by Amazon. They are definitely interested, and that will mean a little bit of money for us to put this on, and also they'll be consulting on the agenda and supplying us with some speakers, we hope. And it's enabled us to basically run this as this will be a not-for-profit event. So we're looking at the ticket prices are like £30 each, which is pretty nuts value, given that it's going to be in a very, very nice central London venue. And I think, I'm confident that the speakers will be really top class too. I've got 2 lined up already, and I'm now having fun thinking about who else I can invite. Got a few others in mind, as I say, including some Amazonians, I think. So as we record this on Friday, the 6th today, the tickets will be on sale next week, and I would be quite surprised if they haven't sold out by the time that we go live next Friday. But in the event that they haven't, what is the link for people to go and check, Mr. Blatch?
So if they go on to the waiting list, I think is the correct link for them to go to, because there's no point in going to the cart necessarily, and they'll know as soon as they go on the waiting list, they'll get an email back telling them what the situation is. If they go to selfpublishingformula.com/SPS live, SPS as in self-publishing show live, all one word. So that's the wait list. Now there'll be a message on that page which will be updated. We will probably build up a wait list just in case things change between now and March, venue changes or something like that. We might be able to take on more people, and we'll probably hold a few tickets back just for the last minute. So it would be worth just adding a name to that list, even if by the time you get there, it has on the face of it sold out.
Yeah, and there are some other things we may do. I'm still kind of mulling over the weekend before having a slightly smaller salon type event. So maybe if you wanted to spend a day with me and a couple of the other speakers who you will have heard of to talk about advertising or craft or marketing, we may do something similar at a slightly higher price point to make that worth everyone's while. But we'll see about that. But the main focus is definitely going to be the Monday. So really, really looking forward to that. I think it's going to be. I've been to a few conferences now over the years, and I've got 2 at the end of this year as well with Nink and with 20 Books. So I have an idea about what makes a good writers conference, and we're going to try and make sure it'll be the best one ever outside of the States. I think that's a given. That's going to be our main target. And, I'd like to think this could be one that in the next year or 2 could be drawing in the 1,200 so that you'll get at Nink at 20 Books this year in Vegas. So yeah. All exciting stuff.
Yes, and I think one of the things, without giving any of the details away, which we're holding back at the moment, but one of the things is access to big industry players. That's one of the things I think that we're going to be able to promise. Right. Now, talking of big industry players.
Oh, yes. That's right. Very good, James. I set you up nicely there. So, yes, this week's interview is with Darren at Amazon. So, Darren Hardy, who runs KDP in the UK. We went down to their swanky Bishopsgate or Shoreditch offices 2 weeks ago. I think it was on a Wednesday. Me, you, and John, and sat down with Darren for an hour or so and asked him some questions. And it's a great interview. Darren's very experienced. He's been at Amazon for something like 13 or 14 years now, which in Amazon terms is pretty. That's pretty long. So he's seen this industry develop from the inside over the course of that time, and we were able to ask him some questions about how things were back then, how things have changed, and some things that might be coming up for Amazon too.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, you've introduced it very well. So let's hear from Darren, then you and I will be back in a moment.
This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Darren Hardy, here we are in the brand spanking new Amazon HQ, which is, I remember this being a building site for about 2 years walking past. I coughed up quite a lot. I mean, I'm not going to put a claim in at this stage, but just to lay the foundation for that. But here you are now. It's an exciting place. I mean, Amazon has gone from Jeff Bezos' garage to where it is today, which is a global phenomenon, and you've seen quite a lot of that. You've been on the inside here in the UK. Just tell us what Amazon was like when you joined it.
Well, when I first started 15 years ago, we were in Slough, and we were in a building. We had one floor in, I think it was an 8-story building with a number of other different companies. And I think the entire company probably fitted into the space that we have in this room from a headquarters capacity, UK headquarters. So yeah, that was 15 years ago. And we've sort of moved a few buildings, gradually got closer and closer to London. And now here we are just outside Liverpool Street.
On the edge of trendy Shoreditch, which
Very
is where
trendy.
sort of all the trendy people are now. I expect you to be. And Slough, we should say, you've come full circle, because that, if people don't know, is where the office was set.
Indeed, it was.
So you must have felt a little bit like being in the office at that time.
Well, it was going around the roundabouts that you saw in the credit sequence. It was a bit like sort of, wow, we're on TV. And of course, it was a roundabout in the middle of a town, but it was, you had a few bars named after various parts of the office, and Wernham Hogs, I think, and things like that. But it's a long time since I've been back, so I'm not sure it's like.
I'm interested in what the company felt like back then. What did it feel for you joining? Did you think, what am I joining here? Or did you know this was going to be what it's become?
I think I had an inkling, because I think by that stage the company had already sort of had an impact in the books world and in music and DVD. And I'd started out as a bookseller in a bookshop, and I remember people coming into the bookshop with a printout saying, I've been onto the internet and I've looked up this book, can you order it for me? And thinking, what's this all about? It did seem like a new thing. And for a while I thought, well, we'll see what happens. But I think by the time I got here, it was very clearly sort of establishing itself. And initially I came in to do publisher sort of negotiations, looking at academic books and that sort of area. And I think there were half a dozen product lines. I think books, music, DVD, VHS video. I think we had. Remember those days?
You still got a VHS player.
Well, they're probably very collectible now, I should imagine, aren't they?
True, yeah.
And a few other product lines. But obviously now, there's just so much more. And this building is a testament to that. It's sort of 15 floors and packed to the rafters with lots of different teams. And it's one of a number of buildings. Outside the warehouse facilities, there's a fashion photography studio here in London. There's the Audible studio where we were last time we met, and a few other locations as well. So it just continues to grow and grow. I think a lot of it still feels very familiar. There's still that sort of buzz of excitement, and it's always exciting doing new things. It's always exciting sort of launching new things, and that's still the same. But obviously there's all sorts of complexity as well now. In the past I would probably be able to tap someone on the shoulder, when I needed to get something done. Chances are they're not even in this country now when we need to sort of talk about particular things. So there's been some changes as well.
So it still feels like a start-up to you?
I think so, because a lot of what we're doing is we're doing new things, even within books. You look at the indie world, and obviously we'll get onto some of this, but the rise of things like subscription. That's still relatively new, and I think there's lots of authors and publishers and retailers still getting to grips with subscription. And in a books industry, which has been around for hundreds of years, we're still facing some really interesting chances to innovate and make reading more accessible. So it's still very sort of startup and entrepreneurial and inventive from that point of view.
Yeah. So your first brush with Amazon, you remember that?
I can, yeah. I went to Slough. So this was when we were working together. I was at the BBFC. I was running something, certifying online content, movies and TV and stuff like that. And I went to the Slough offices to meet the Amazon video team. So I do remember that office very well. And I can be slightly less diplomatic than Darren. It was Slough is an interesting area. What was it Betjeman said?
Yes, come friendly bond.
Yeah. So. It was. I remember being a very dusty office, because I think it was like a mailroom as well, potentially, or something like that.
There were several different elements to the building. Yeah.
So, and since then, obviously, I wasn't even writing then, I don't think, or if I was, it was in a very kind of relaxed capacity. But since then, I've been to all of the offices. I think from Slough to Love Film as well. I went to Love Film once. Slough, Love Film, then to Holborn. Barbican, where the Audible offices are, and now to here. So it couldn't be more different, really.
Yeah.
You should get a badge for having sort of collected all those buildings.
Speaking of which,
this is a secret thing, isn't it, within Amazon, which we're now going to blow.
Not that secret.
For me, it feels a bit like Logan's Run, where you've got this thing on your hand that changes colour when they're ready to move you up and move you on. But your lanyard has a colour and that's significant in Amazon.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, for mine, I have my 15-year badge. So every 5 years you get a new colour, and purple is 15. I think...
What's Jeff?
He probably has a special colour, I would
Platinum.
imagine. Yeah, well, originator colour. I don't know what
Yes.
that would look like. But yes, so there you go. So I waited 15 years and I now have my purple badge.
Purple lanyard, good.
Which means, I don't know, does that mean everybody looks at me with a degree of respect in the building, or do they just think there goes one of the old ones? And,
Logan's right.
that's
Have
it,
to
bending over his
ask
back.
James off. We'll leave that.
How much respect he has.
Okay, well, let's talk about publishing. I mean, Amazon is obviously the place that I now buy my loo roll on, subscribe and save and everything else, and literally everything you can think of is automating my life. But we really want to talk about the difference it's made to publishing, and actually the difference it's made to writers. And in the short period of time that I've been involved in this world, it's been revolutionary. It's changed lives. It's democratized writing. So we're huge fans of the movements happening. You're sitting inside one of the enablers of that's also become one of the giants at the same time. It's an interesting sort of feel. Well, what does it look like from your perspective of what's happened to publishing?
It's really interesting, I think, from what's in the publishing world, like we were talking about a few minutes ago, like subscription. There's been all these new things that have come through. And I think over this time, I think what I've noticed is there's just more and more innovation coming around. And I think the rise of indie is part of that. If you go back 15 years ago, the idea of being an independent publisher was probably something that many people just didn't really understand and take their time to get their heads around. Now it's just here, it's established, it's part of the industry, and it's leading to all sorts of interesting growth. Subscription is a little bit like that. I think there's lots of little pockets of innovation that are going on, and I think that's one of the great things about being here is I'm lucky enough to participate in a lot of those sorts of things as they get developed and then get rolled out, and go talk to authors about them, get their feedback about what's working, what they might like to see next, and so on. So I think over that time, even though it's getting bigger, it's still a lot of really great little ideas that are building up and growing into some really big ideas from there.
And you must have seen, as we have, authors who've become very successful as independent authors who probably, it's difficult to say for certain, but many of whom simply their writing would not have seen the light of day under the old system, which was very, very narrow, gatekeeper focused and difficult to get into. That's professionally got to be pleasing for
It's
you.
amazing. And I mean, we go to, Mark and I attend a lot of events, and you go to so many where somebody will walk up to you and say, I've been trying to get this book published. I was told it wasn't the right book for now. I'm going to do it anyway, kind of thing. And you think, a few years ago, you probably would have put it back in the drawer and started something else completely because you've been told it wasn't right in some way. So that's a really powerful thing, I think, for authors to take control and think, actually, I've written a good book, I want it to go out there, and I'm going to make it happen. So I think that's really exciting. And hearing those stories, for me personally, is hugely motivating, because you get these people saying, thank you. I mean, it's nothing I've done, but thank you. This tool allows me to do this and enables me to be able to get my story out there, and that's really great to see.
And we should say, I've known you a couple of years, you are a book guy.
Yes.
And you're publishing first and foremost. You're sitting here in the middle of the sort of digital leading edge of everything, but actually you're somebody who loves books.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think so many of our team do. I mean, we've been debating the Booker shortlist, we've been debating all those kind of things in the team. I think it's one of those product lines that just draws people in for the love of the product. And books, I think, is a great part of the Amazon business, because so many people care about it. Even if you're working in AWS or you're working in the grocery team, I mean, so many people who are writing books themselves, and they just want to get them out there, and you sort of become part of that.
That's how the business started. It was the first line was books, wasn't it?
Yes, that's it. Yes, you go back to, like as you say, in Jeff's garage. I think there is a record of the book that was the first one to get shipped, but it all started from books. Him and that small team of people wrapping them up in his garage, sending them off down to the postal office, and away it goes from there.
Amazing. We should say, this is a live working environment, and they've decided to move all the trays that are on this floor to just over there during this interview. That's fine. At some point, they're going to run out of trays and trolleys.
You'd think, wouldn't you?
So I hinted at the fact that you've gone from this, you are the enabler, and you're obviously thinking innovatively all the time. You're talking about the new areas. At the same time, you're a beast, to use that word. I mean, you are dominant. You've been so successful in this space. How easy is it for you to satisfy, because the author community, you've got people's livelihoods now depending on this. they can be a relatively, I don't know, can they be a demanding audience for you? Is it easy for you to satisfy the sort of professional demands of this new breed of writer?
It's a really good question that we keep asking ourselves, because ultimately the process never finishes. And I think Amazon is a great company for that. You can see so many features that Amazon have launched or new product lines that they've launched where you can imagine many other companies thinking, great, we've done that, let's just stop there. But there's always an opportunity to do more. And even within books, even within a category that we've been working in for many, many years, there's still the opportunity to deliver books quicker. There's still the opportunity to deliver them more conveniently for customers, make discovery even easier. And so even though authors are asking for more all the time, customers are also asking for more all the time. And we're always challenging ourselves, I think, to keep the customer and the author and whoever the customer is in a particular context front of mind, so we keep pushing ourselves to do more. The danger would be if we just sat back and said, that's it, we're done, nothing more to do here, because very soon everything else sort of overtakes you and you're not serving your customers as well as you might.
Yeah. Well, we do notice the platform changes from time to time.
Because we have to re-record everything.
Yeah. As people who teach people how to use it.
Yes,
and,
absolutely. Yes.
Amazon's fairly stable actually compared to.
Yes.
I mean, Facebook changes like every other week. It feels like, but Amazon has been. The KDP backend, I don't think it's changed much.
Well, we had obviously a couple of years ago, the last 2 years we did the Create Space move. All of those, we had two separate systems, Create Space for paperback books and KDP for digital. That all moved. But much of the sort of, as you say, the publishing process and things has been relatively stable. But I think that's one of the challenges, is that there are often little changes being made, and then every now and then there's a big change that's made. And you need that awareness, and obviously what you guys do is really important as part of that, to go back and have another look. Maybe you couldn't do something that you wanted to do 6 months ago, but who knows, maybe that feature's launched or something. And so keep checking, because things do change a lot, and obviously from a website point of view, all sorts of things going on to try and help customers shop and get things that they want more quickly.
Would you say as an organisation it's customer-led rather than supplier-led?
Well, it depends on the context. I mean, ultimately, and it's one of those Amazon mantras, start from the customer and then work back from there. But the customer is obviously the retail customer, but equally from a KDP point of view, for example, authors are our customers. Literary agents are our customers. Publishers, indie publishers using KDP are our customers. And that will change across the team. But ultimately, what we're all about, what this whole business is about, is serving paying customers, retail customers, so they can buy the products that they want. And helping authors grow their business inevitably means you have to serve your customers from that point of view.
Now, we had, I think, 500 questions literally came in.
596.
Yeah,
596.
I mean, most of them may be aimed at Jeff.
Right.
Well,
I can't speak for Jeff.
Not to underplay your influence in Amazon, but a lot of people are using Amazon advertising now. In our that's come up out of almost nowhere for authors a couple of years ago, and suddenly Mark will say #1 advertising platform for him, I think.
Absolutely. We're not going to talk about it in too much depth today, but
but we have to talk about Amazon advertising.
There's no question that is. I'm keeping a very close eye this month on my spend across the three main platforms. So AMG, so Amazon Media Group, not that well known in the indie space yet. What used to be called AMS, which is Amazon Advertising, and Facebook. Those are the three platforms I'm using this month mostly. And the most effective ads, the ones that convert the best, are the Amazon ads. And it's not that surprising, because you're serving ads to people who are actually looking for books at the time that the ads appear. So, the advent of that platform and its development has been a real bonus for discovery.
And that goes back to one of your earlier questions around new things launching all the time, and authors checking, going back and having a look at things that they wanted to do that maybe they couldn't have done in the past and now can. And one of the frequently asked questions I get is, how do I sell more books? I've published my book, it's out there, and I've tried a few things, what next? And as you say, advertising, you can, as a KDP author, you can advertise on Amazon.com at the moment. That's the only marketplace in which you can advertise. But we hear lots of really positive feedback like yours, that authors really like it. So it's something that we obviously need to work on in terms of getting that rolled out. If that's going to be possible, watch this space. Who knows what might happen. But I think the key thing is there's always new opportunities. And you just need to keep trying them and keep testing them. Yeah,
I think it's fair to say for people watching who are expecting a flash announcement that tomorrow things are going to change, that Amazon will tell us when it's ready that the platform's going to be expanded.
If and when there's any announcement to make, obviously announcements will be made.
Yeah, and but it's only going one way, isn't it? It's unlikely that tomorrow they're going to say, well, we're going to stop innovating, we're going to bring things back a bit. Things are only going to expand one way, and people become a little perhaps impatient. You know, they want to use the service, they want to use some things. They see other products being advertised in different ways on Amazon, so it's possible to. You don't even need a looking glass to see what's possible for authors in the future.
Well, and I think there's all sorts of, we tend to get very wrapped up, quite rightly, in the literary world, in the world of being an author, but Amazon and many other businesses are involved in lots of other different things. And who knows, there might be something that goes on in the shoes category that will tell us something that might be applicable into the books world. You know, and that's one of the great things, I think, about the expansion of product lines and businesses that Amazon has been able to sort of to do, is it builds a huge amount of learning that can come back into the existing businesses. You know, and it just means that, who knows, as you say, innovation is only going one way. It's only going to hopefully get more and more effective in its many different ways. But who knows what tomorrow will bring. There's probably something coming down the line that none of us would have anticipated, but will revolutionize it all over again.
Let's talk about people who publish more than just their own books. So I'm not talking about Random House and the Hatchet, etc. I'm talking about individuals. So we have what seems, from where we're sitting, a sudden movement of indie authors. Are you seeing that as well? Indie publishers?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's again, it goes back to that whole empowerment. There are tools and processes, and KDP is one of them, that enable people to do so much more than they used to be able to do. To publish a book, you know, going back a few decades, was a very costly business. You know, you had print runs, you had warehousing, all sorts of things going on. Now, with the rise of digital, it sort of makes it so much more accessible. And I think there are people who are publishing themselves and then realizing, actually, I've really enjoyed this part of the process. You know, the writing's one thing, but actually the business side is a really interesting area, and I want to do more. And then, a bit like you guys, you sort of get involved in giving people advice and helping them, and then suddenly, who knows, you've sprung up a publisher, you know, almost unwittingly. And that's great now, because it's so easy to do. Obviously, it takes a certain amount of application and dedication and hard work, but if that's the kind of area you want to go down, then why not? And we see all sorts of. I speak to people at events where they've almost stumbled into it. You know, they published a book themselves, maybe published a couple. Someone asked them for some help and said, "Oh, I can do that for you." And then before you know it, you've published 3 or 4 people, and you've turned yourself into a publisher. It's quite amazing.
Does this feel like a bit of a sea change for the future? Do you think this is going to be an unstoppable rise and a new way that most writers will get published, or is it always going to remain a sort of alternative?
Yeah, who knows? I really don't know. I think the key thing is there's a choice there now, and I can imagine. I don't know whether the Publishers Association or anybody's done some analysis on the growth of publishing. On the one hand, you've got the very big media publishers who seem to get bigger and bigger and sort of acquiring other publishers. But on the other hand, you've got lots of publishers springing up, and very niche publishers as well now. I think, again, that sort of rise of technology enables you to publish books that might not have been economic to publish in the past, but now you can go down that route and, you know, publish a particular genre or a particular category, because you know you don't need to sell a number to make it worthwhile.
Yeah, we're seeing Jasper Joffe later, and Joffe Books. It's taken Joy Ellis and Faith Martin. I think, well, putting words in his mouth, I think those authors, you know, was perhaps struggling. They weren't that interested in the business side of things and were struggling to make that much of an income from their books. And now with Jasper publishing them, they are regularly at the top of the charts. I think he told me once last year, I think he had over like 20 of the books in the top 100 were published by Joffe Books, which is pretty crazy when you think about it. And I imagine those authors are probably extremely grateful for what Jasper's done for their careers.
Again, you know, somebody who's got a particular skill set, he's obviously stuck a very magic formula that he can use, and it's working really, really well. So, and there's
Who taught him? Was it me?
Yeah.
He did it better than me, though.
And I'm British-like, but I think it's worth celebrating authors being well remunerated for their work, which is not, you know, it's not something that's been. You don't hear about rich writers from 50 years ago. In fact, you hear the opposite. You know, the classic writer was struggling. But you must meet writers now whose lives have been changed.
Absolutely, and I think it's one of the joys of the job, and I think also one of the great things about going out to events. You know, obviously there's the big events like London Book Fair, but we also try and get around the country and go and meet people sort of outside of London. And you hear all these stories, and it really ranges. It's not like everyone's gone and bought a super yacht and become multimillionaires, but even just to, obviously apart from Mark, but even to just, you know, take the kids on holiday or something, or to have a treat at the end of the week because you've sold. I mean, it may be just a few books, but it's given you some extra income to do something really nice with. I think that's really quite an inspiring thing, especially when you get that real sense of pride in. I created this book, I've sold some copies, and I've earned some money from it, which is, it must be hugely empowering.
Yeah, I think that is the statistic that is trotted out a lot, and it's a good one. It was in the Amazon letter to shareholders 2018, I think, and it was 1,000 authors had made, what was it?
100,000.
$100,000, which is amazing. I think it would be more interesting how many authors have made 5,000 or 10,000, because as you say, that's money that they wouldn't have had otherwise. They created it from their artistic endeavour, and that's a lot of money for lots of people. That could be, the average, if you look at what the Society of Authors suggests, the average median earning now for authors is less than the minimum wage, so 10 grand a year in London, something like that. And I'd love to know how many authors have hit that. Through publishing themselves. Yeah,
it'd be really interesting.
That's life-changing for many people.
Absolutely, but for many of them in the old sort of models, that would not have been viable. They wouldn't have been able to publish on that basis. So
I wouldn't. I mean, my books, when I was published by Macmillan, didn't make. I was dropped. They didn't want to publish a third book because I didn't sell enough of the. I didn't. I might argue that they didn't sell enough of the first and the second books, but whatever the reason, they didn't sell enough for them to want to do a third one, and I gave up for 7 years until the Kindle came around.
Well, it does sort of stand to reason, doesn't it? We know the traditional publishers. We've been in their buildings, and they're big like this. They're big buildings with lots of people working.
Not as big as this.
Not as big as this. And you've got to sell huge amounts of books just to break even to service that building and that company. That's how that industry works. Well, if you're in your pants in your bedroom and you write a novel and you sell it, you can sell far fewer and actually make a difference. And that's simply been enabled by this digital revolution.
That's right. And I think for many authors, it's getting clear in their minds what do they want. And I think we talked about this before, but if you are going into writing because you want to become a multimillionaire, you're setting yourself a fairly big challenge. If you just enjoy doing it and you'd like to earn a little bit, then great. And if any earnings beyond just covering your costs of maybe a cover designer or whatever it might be, then there's a really big opportunity. Why not?
So in terms of innovations, we know there's no grand announcement, at least at the time of recording the interview, in terms of ads platform and anything like that. But you did mention the charts. Mentioned the charts just now.
Yes, absolutely.
And in a way of looking at how authors are doing, it's actually quite difficult to know where indies stand, because the traditional, the papers publish their Sunday lists and stuff, and they don't tend to include the Amazon sales, as far as I know.
Well, I think there's various sort of criteria that go into how a chart gets assembled. Our chart is sort of based on literally the sort of units bought, but really interestingly, we have a separate chart for the most read titles. So obviously books that participate in Kindle Unlimited, in Prime Reading, or in audio for Audible, we can actually show which books are getting the most reads, which is sometimes very similar to the most sold, but not always. There's in publishing history, there's all those sort of infamous books that everybody bought but nobody actually read. This chart will sort of highlight some of those things, and it was amazing. We've been running the charts now for about 3 or 4 weeks, and I think it was like a couple of weeks ago, the big story was L.J. Ross knocking Harry Potter off the #1 spot in the most read chart for the week, which was a great thing to be able to say to customers, the media generally, is here is a real recognition of success. And it's a little bit like that remuneration, like earning a living thing. I think one of the other great things that seems to be sort of changing a little bit is actually recognizing great writing wherever it comes from. And it's not that, well, in order to be eligible for a prize or whatever, you have to be published in this way. It's actually, let's just recognize what is good, what customers really enjoy, and Amazon Charts has been a great sort of step in that direction of showing these are the books that customers are actually reading as well as the customers are actually buying.
Yeah, I was with my agent this morning and we were talking about charts and things, and the bookseller chart in particular. I think Adam Kay's book, This Is Going to Hurt, had been in the ebook chart, had been #1 for 7 weeks, but that chart, as far as I understand it, only counts books that have ISBNs, and so none of my books have ISBNs. None of Louise's books, I don't think, would have ISBNs. So there's a huge amount of books that are being enjoyed on Amazon that aren't covered by the Sunday Times bestseller chart, the booksellers charts. They're just invisible. And it's a much more accurate representation of which books are being enjoyed. All those different mediums of, is it subscription, is it audio, are they, page reads, whatever. it's a much more accurate way. So it's been out in the States for a little while and recently
right,
come to the UK. So.
And there's some nice little features in there as well. So, for example, in a week, often a title will get highlighted because it sort of had the most sort of highlights, or it was the one where customers posted a review sort of most quickly from reading it. You feel like you're really engaged with the book.
Pointed out typos. You got that chart?
I don't think we have that one. No.
I don't think I've ever read a Kindle book, traditionally published or indie, without sending a typo or two back, especially his. Do you think
there's a word for people?
Does it feel like there's some resistance in the old media to sort of acknowledging the growth of independent titles?
I don't know that there's necessarily resistance as so much just awareness, I think. I mean, and we sort of in the publishing world get very sort of hooked up on traditional versus indie versus whatever route you've chosen to go down. For many customers, and I think for many journalists, actually they don't really mind. It's just, is there a really interesting story? Both in terms of the book itself, but then from a media point of view, is there an interesting story? And often you'll see indie authors get picked up because they have an interesting life story, that they had a really interesting route to publishing. But sometimes that tends to sort of downplay the fact that actually they write good books as well, and I think that's why charts and things at the Amazon charts launch is so useful, because it's highlighting these are just great books that customers really like. It doesn't really matter how they got published. The fact is they were published, and look how successful they're being. And I think some journalists in the media, maybe it gives them an opportunity to see that. It's not that they're having to choose, do we want to talk about indie or not? It's like, here's a really good story.
Yeah, and it's worth remembering it's extremely likely that most readers won't notice whether the book's been published by LJ Ross herself or Pam Macmillan or someone. So yeah, we fret about it. We know the difference.
Yes.
And of course, you service both. Amazon's a platform, a crucial platform for the traditional industry as well as
a bookseller. Yes. We want customers to be able to find any book that they want to sort of buy, and they may do that as a digital book. They may do that as an audio book. They may read it through subscription. It may be a traditionally published book. It may come from Amazon Publishing. It may come through Marketplace, through the sort of third-party sellers that we have on the website. And I think the key thing is, if you come to the website to find something, that you're able to do so.
So Amazon charts, a fantastic way of seeing what's going on. And also, I think for authors to clock other things like audiobooks, for instance, some authors just don't go into those areas. They're going to start seeing these charts, the same books in multiple charts, and realise they might be leaving some money on the table.
Well, I think a lot of authors have sort of twigged, caught on to audiobooks quite a while ago, and I think with Amazon's offering the ACX offer, it really opened the door to indie authors being able to create their own audiobooks and get them made. But there's been quite a lot of media coverage over the last couple of years, I think, around the rise of audio, and it's great. It's just, again, it's another way of helping people discover books. And if you are driving and you can't possibly read a text because you've got to concentrate on the road, having it playing in the background, I think is another way of at least keeping books relevant.
Or if you're blind,
or if you're blind, absolutely, so many applications.
I get emails fairly regularly from readers who, for a number of different reasons, wouldn't be able to read my stuff, and because they're available in audio, they can enjoy them, which is pretty cool.
And I think from an author perspective, as you say, like the opening the door to revenue streams, finding new customers. Maybe there are, like you say, readers that only read in audio. If you don't have an audio offering for them, then that customer is automatically closed to you. Similarly with print and digital or subscription versus a la carte, as we call it on the website. If you're not in there, then those customers will be closed to you. So I think many indies just think, I need to get to as many readers as I can. How do I go about that? And audio and all the other offerings are a core part of that, I think.
Yeah. You do still see people commuting, walking along, reading paperbacks. And think, put some headphones on. How do you do that? Anyway.
Or watching a movie or playing a game or whatever it might. Usually as you're trying to get around them, I think.
I don't think I've ever noticed anyone driving with a paperback down there, which is quite good. Okay, so we'll wrap up, Darren. What keeps you awake at night when you think about your job, who you service, and where you're going to be in 5 years or so? Sounds like a job interview.
What keeps me?
You look like somebody who sleeps soundly, by the way. Should you?
I have a 16-year-old daughter, so it's I'm always worrying about something. So, from a work perspective, I think the key thing is there's still so much to be done. And we talked earlier about like that innovation, that rate of innovation, it doesn't really slow down. There's always something. And we feel the pain that authors have of, well, why aren't we launching certain things sooner? Why doesn't this behave in a certain way? And often there's a lot of work going on and you just want to get things out there as quickly as you can. But equally, you need to make sure when you do launch something that it's really good and it's going to offer the best service that you can. So I think many of the things I sit there thinking about is, how do we go faster? How can we do more? Which I suspect is probably what a lot of authors are thinking as well. But that's a sort of fact of life, I suppose, in some ways.
And do you feel, you meet Mark and you meet LJ Ross, do you meet a lot of authors who, in fact, I think you said earlier that you do, who are just starting out, just trying to get their first books on? Because that can be quite painful for people learning the process, and if they have a problem, the accounts get closed, all the rest of it, they can suddenly feel like they're dealing with a huge business who they can't speak to a human being. Do you feel that?
Well, I think actually one of the biggest challenges is for many authors just starting out, that expectation that it's going to be really difficult. In some way that they won't be allowed to participate in some way, because I think there's still that perception that to be published author, you need a literary agent, you need somebody to validate what you've written before you can get out there. And I think one of the great things about what I do is then sort of talking about, well, no, you can do this. It's up to you whether you do, but you can do this. I think that's probably the biggest sort of challenge that people have, is just getting over the sort of preconception that in some way they won't be allowed to do something. So I think that's probably the big challenge when you meet authors who are just sort of starting out. And often then you sort of explain, like, our service, KDP, here are all the things you can do. Then there's, well, surely there's a catch. Surely it's going to cost me a lot, or you're going to want something else from me. No. This is, you retain the copyright of the book. You have full control over the process. If you want to switch it all off at some point, you're perfectly entitled to do that. If you want to publish a whole load more books, you can. And suddenly you realise, actually, yes, it is as simple as that. And then away you go. And I've been fortunate enough over the last few years where you then meet people maybe a year later or 6 months later, and they come back and say, and this is what happened.
They've got a fat cigar and they're in their open top car.
Not quite like that, but that they've actually really pleased with how it's gone. Equally, there are some people that still think, and what's next? How can I get to the next level? But I think it's a fun part of the job in many ways, is you get to follow those stories over time. And obviously, we've been talking for several years in terms of Mark's business, and LJ I've been talking to for many years. You just see so much success going on. It's the sort of energizing aspect of the role.
Yeah, good. Well, what we want to see is a booker shortlist.
Why?
Well,
Why do we want to
because
see that? It's relevant.
A KDP author.
Well, we have Kindle Storyteller. So
Yes.
Storyteller.
Panel of judges this year.
Yes, that's it. So for
Can I enter?
Well, you've got to publish first.
Yes,
He's been.
It's actually the deadline's soon, isn't it?
yes, 31st of August. Yeah. Publish a book. Yeah, and then we will.
I don't think you're going to make the cut-off this year. I shouldn't allow the interview to close without saying I've been badgering Darren for a long time to publish his book.
Yes.
I do have a series of post-it notes.
I think there's someone else in the room who's going to get hassle for it. Have you? Is that it? A series of post-it? It must be more than that.
It's like 3 really, what I think are really good ideas that I just keep knocking around. The trouble is, I think I get them muddled up sometimes. So I'll be talking to Mark or Louise. I'm thinking about this, and then I think, no, hang on, that's the other thing. And I mean, it's the inevitable inertia that is part of the battle. Is all those people that think, actually, I've got a good story to tell.
Yeah.
Is the really hard thing is to write the book.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah.
Good. He makes it look easy. Darren, look, it's such a pleasure. It's always a delight bumping into you around the various places, and you are a great ambassador for Emerson. And like I say, and I've alluded to it, it is a big organisation. Some people do feel, oh my goodness, dealing with it, but that's I think that's all broken down by listening to the human face of it, which you are, and the whole what's next attitude which you have here. What's coming up next?
Day one.
Still day one, yes. One of the Amazon mantras is you've got to keep thinking it's still day one. You've got to keep pushing yourself.
What's the next colour?
Good question. I think it might be grey. I think. I'm not sure.
That definitely sounds like Logan's.
If there's any left. Was it silver? It might be silver. Silver,
Silver or grey. That sounds a little bit like you're being wheeled out somewhere. Okay, well, good luck with that. We'll come back to that.
Thank you very much. 5 more years.
Yeah, Darren, thank you so much indeed.
Thank you.
This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
There you go. A high level of video production as well. I should say thank you to John for racing around. You did see him. He did do a cameo, a Tarantino-like appearance in the back. Having said that, on that note, I went to see the Tarantino this week. I didn't see him in it. I thought he appeared somewhere in all his films. Like
John Dyer?
No, John Dye appears in the back shot of almost every shot that's ever taken in the UK. Somewhere.
Yes, interesting. Yeah, I haven't seen that yet, so I'll keep my eyes open for him. And Tarantino.
Yes, indeed. So John did make an appearance in the back there, and Darren. I said this to Darren. I think he comes across because I made the point to him several times, and I know Amazon is the enabler that's created. It's been a massive part in enabling and creating this digital revolution, which is amazing. And at the same time, they've become the big beast in there, which is kind of difficult for them to trade. Now, they're a company that don't stand still. They're a company that think of themselves as day one and all the rest of it. But they can come across a bit corporate to people, particularly if they've got a problem. The account gets closed down by, some flag goes up and they can't get responses. And it's very frustrating dealing with large organizations. And I think Darren is the antidote to that, because when you hear him talk, they want the best for their readers. They want the best for their writers. They treat their writers as customers, and they want things to work smoothly. So the intent is correct there. And people who very quickly go down a dark alley saying, well, they're out to get you and they're fiddling the figures, which is nonsense, of course. All of that melts away when you actually hear someone like Darren, who's at the front line, making all this happen, talking. So I think that's a really positive thing we get from Darren. He's an excellent ambassador for Amazon.
Yeah, he is. He's a nice guy as well. So it's always nice to get him on. And he's already offered to come on again, so we've got the 200th show coming out, and he was like, "Well, I'll come on for that if you like." Yeah. I think we may space him out a little bit. Too much down is probably. Well, can you have too much down? Probably not, but I think it would be. We'll definitely get him back again in the next 6 months or so we can have an update as to how things. As you say, Amazon's changing all the time, so yeah, I think in 6 months' time there'll be even more things that we can talk about.
And it was a bit of an elephant in the room was the access to the better ads platform, so that Amazon ads people in the UK can advertise all over Amazon domains. But there was no point in us going into detail on that, because quite simply it's not there at the moment, and Darren is not going to sit there speculating about it. He's going to tell us when it's going to be there. But we're hoping, obviously, sooner rather than later. That would be a good reason to talk to him again when that gets opened up again. And we did talk around it a little bit and making the point that it's only going in one direction. Your access to adverts, how powerful and that platform is it's only going to get better, not worse. So we do need to be patient like that. Hopefully by the time my book's published, it'll all be there, ready to.
Well, if it's not done by 2025, I'll be very surprised. So absolutely. Yeah, I was going to say, you should be writing rather than playing with toys. Yeah. The most important, doesn't matter how good your cover is if you haven't got a book to sell. So frankly, this is just prevarication. This is just displacement theory.
I've been doing a couple of hours a day, every day for the last 2 or 3 weeks, doing the revision side of it, which I'm now finally enjoying, having sort of broken the back of it and coming towards the end, really enjoying that side of it. But you are, you keep waking up in the morning saying, right, we're doing this today, SBS Live, and our day gets turned upside down. So today's not been a good day. I haven't written a word yet today. Thanks, Dawson.
Well, there you go. You still got a couple of hours. I'll be doing a little bit of writing this afternoon. Actually, no, I've been doing my slides for Nink today. So that's...
Yes. And I haven't started my presentation for Nink. I've got to do that. Me and John Dyer are doing a double act. It's immediately after yours, so I expect you to be there.
I probably will be there, unless I can think of a good reason to make an escape.
And yeah, none of us might be there because British Airways keep going on strike.
I think we can get there. Getting back is the issue. So yes, that's going to be fun and games.
And now I have put the details in the calendar and on Facebook for our meetups, which are going to take place whilst we're out there. So Vancouver is going to be on that Saturday, which is, I think, the 21st. Let me just quickly check that. And there is a venue for that, a very nice looking bar, which has been sorted out for me by my erstwhile assistant in Vancouver, Lisa Zampano. So she's doing a brilliant job for us there. Yes, that is correct. 21st of September, yes. In the evening. Yes, it's on Sunday here because of the time difference, and I'm confused. So if you go to the Facebook group, the community group, and have a look at the events, you'll see the details of that. In fact, it should be in all the Facebook groups. And then on the Thursday night, I can announce, on the 26th of September, we will host a drinks in the Shark Tooth Tavern at the Tradewinds Grand Resort, which is on the main strip in St Pete Beach. You can Google the address, but I'll create an event for that as well. Now I know that our friends in Draft Digital are going to do something on the Saturday night. I think they're going to do their karaoke. Now you and I won't be there for that because we're both flying back on Saturday, but Thursday night I think they're going to join us for that, and we'll have what we always have, which is a relaxed and fun time, and you will turn up late and drunk.
Well, I have actually, weirdly enough, I just had an email from Apple this week saying, do you want to meet for a drink in Florida? So I said, yeah, sure. What day? Thursday? So I'm actually meeting Apple at 5:30 on Thursday. So yes, the chance
you will be drunk, yeah.
I've had a few cocktails by the time I roll up. So yeah, that's going to be entertaining.
Well, bring the Apple guys as well. We'll buy them an apple juice. I'm sure they haven't heard that before. I'm going to wear this kit exclusively the whole time in Nick, by the way. I'm going to fly in it. I'm going to sit in my seat on the British Airways.
Well, you want to speak to Nathan Van Coops, and maybe he can take you up.
Yes, I think he's doing that. I think he's doing his authors and planes again. So I shall bring my oxygen mask across for that. I might get stopped at customs.
That will be the least of your problems. Getting stopped at customs. You trouncing around wearing that kind of stuff, you'll probably get shot.
I'm ready for action. Good. Okay. I think that's it. We've got anything else to say? Anything else to say, Dawson?
No, I'm all tapped out. I've got books to write. I've got a book out next week.
Yes. I haven't, but I've got a book out soon. But I will do some stuff. Okay. Right. That's it. So
that's
what do we
it.
say?
So I'll say it's goodbye from me.
That's over and out from me.
Sorry, everyone. Okay, see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Get show notes, the podcast archive, and free resources to boost your writing career at selfpublishingshow.com. Join our thriving Facebook group at selfpublishingshow.com/Facebook. Support the show at patreon.com/selfpublishingshow. And join us next week for more help and inspiration so that you can make your mark as a successful indie author. Publishing is changing, so get your words into the world and join the revolution with The Self-Publishing Show.